Hey everyone, Panem here again, and today we are going to have a deck profile. So this deck I've played at least in one or two events, local level, but at least they were pretty big. One of them was over 30 players, and it actually always kind of topped. The event where there were fewer players, I ended first, and the event where there were about 30 to 40 players, the deck basically tied with 3 other people, so there were 4 people tied for 7th and 8th place at the top, and those are basically the top 8 get prizes. So, it's kind of decent enough, and the deck has been modified since to actually deal with the problems that it faced. So, yeah, I think that this is a pretty solid build. Of course, there is a lot of space to upgrade the deck, but, I don't really want to invest into the rest of the deck, so this is going to be pretty much the build for now. Just so you guys know, it's the Cyber Dragon deck. So this deck is very, very fun. A lot of weird combos just to make your opponent lose basically their cards as much as possible, and that's basically how you win with this. So yeah, just trying to get a good lighting going, which is actually kind of difficult today, and we'll get started with a quick profile for you guys. So over 40 cards, maybe around 45, 46 cards, and the 100% goal of this deck is to go second, stop your opponent during their turn, and then take control of the game while it's your turn. So obviously, the star of the deck, Cyber Dragon 3 times. Obviously, you just summon it and use it for your fusions or beat stick. Against trick stars, particularly, beat sticking is very smart. We have 3 Cyber Dragon Core, the almost the best card for your monsters, basically, because the name becomes Cyber Dragon on the field or in the graveyard, which means that you can do a lot of fusions with it, but also, when it's summoned, normal summoned, you get to search a cyber spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And if it's in your graveyard and you don't have any monsters on your field while your opponent has some, you can banish it to get another effect of special summoning a Cyber Dragon monster to your field. So really, this guy is an MVP for a lot of very, very easy to notice reason. We have 3 Cyber Dragon Heirs, another very good MVP. As soon as it hits the grave, basically, you get a search for this guy right here, but specifically this guy. You don't get any Cyber Dragon monster. It has to be Cyber Dragon. But there's also the effect of level modulating once per turn, either the search or the level modulating. And also the name becomes Cyber Dragon, so a lot of combos are very, very easy at that point. And these 2 have very low attack, so obviously Machine Dupe is a must. We have Cyber Dragon Veer twice. So Veer is not that great, although it's very easy to summon it, because as soon as you normal summon or special summon a Cyber Dragon, you basically get to special summon this, and this gives all of your Cyber Dragon monsters you control 500 attack and defense. Well, not Cyber Dragon, but Cyber Dragon specifically. So these guys will gain, and basically pretty much every card with Cyber Dragon in this deck does change its name to Cyber Dragon, so it will work for them. But this is not a beat stick, this is a combo extender, because if you summon Core and you search, and you do special summon this when you summoned Core, well, basically, you can use Core to make a fusion, and then use Veer to, use that fusion and your Veer to make the Link monster, and you still have the search you did at first. And, well, you could just go off, and it's very, very easy at that point. We have Galaxy Soldier 3 times, because he's a very, very powerful level 5 light machine monster you are going to have to play. It's not for any reason that this card is expensive at the moment. It's a very easy card to summon, and when you use, when you use Heirs, you can send Heirs to the grave to activate Galaxy Soldier's effect, which means you get to search with Heirs too. So basically, you search for both a Galaxy and a Cyber Dragon, so you get another target for your second Galaxy to actually get summoned on the same turn. So for the price of 2 cards, you get an Infinity, but you also milled your deck for 2 cards instead of just 1. And honestly, at that point, it's pretty worth it, because you also have a Cyber in your graveyard. You have a Cyber Dragon in your graveyard, and so if you didn't normal summon yet, you can always summon Core and extend, So a lot of very good combos with this. Also, it's a 2000 attack beat stick, so, when you take control of an opponent's monster for X reason, or you get thrown some tokens at you or whatever, you can always just tribute those and summon this bad boy. When your opponent puts Ibli on your field, you have 6 ways out of Ibli. With Cyber Dragon 3 times and Galaxy Soldier 3 times, you use your normal summon, but you at least get out of Ibli's way. We need to play a lot of hand traps because this is a going second deck. So preferably you play light ones because you can use them for Galaxy Soldier. So you play 3 Effect Veilers. Very, very powerful card in this meta right now, and honestly, wouldn't play the deck without them. You also play 3 Ghost Ogres. Might downgrade to 2 eventually if I do find it more bricky. I lost 1 game out of the whole tournament of 30 plus people, and I lost 1 of those games because of this card right here. Started the game with 3 of these and 1 machine dupe and 1 searcher, but the searcher got negated and I can only use 1 of these per turn. But yeah, the tournament did end X2, so it's not too bad. Only happened 1 to brick on this, so when you only brick once, it's not too bad. We play Ash Blossom twice because it's not light. We don't play any draws, so really draws in the meta that I'm viewing at the locals and stuff like that, draw is not very useful at the moment. I didn't face any Trick Stars, but I did face some Burning Abyss. They don't search many more than 2 or 3 times a turn, and if you stop the right one, it stops it entirely. Played a lot against Gokis, but at some point, you just don't care enough to stop Gokis if you just time it well, especially with this deck because you can just steal monsters to make your fusions and stuff like that. So Ash Blossom twice is good. If you want to play 3, go ahead. I do encourage you to do so. Maybe take 1 Ogre out for another Ash. Draws are in the side deck, basically. Cyber Emergency 3 times because it's a great searcher, and if you get negated, you get to get it back. And if you had Urz in your hand already, well, you get a search for Cyber Dragon as well as getting this back to your hand. So it's not that bad, even if it gets negated and if you have a decent hand at least. But, it's only a once per turn, so if you recycle it, you don't get to use it again this turn. But usually, the opponent, when they go first, they don't really plan on playing a lot of hand traps, so you don't really have to deal with that game 2 or 3. Game 1, maybe, but game 2 or 3, not as much. We have 2 Cyber Rev systems. You could play 1 if you want, but I do find that special summoning a Cyber Dragon from your hand or graveyard and it not being destroyed by card effects is pretty awesome, honestly. When you are somewhat in a losing game and you already have all your Cyber Dragons in your graveyard, this can bring them back. You steal a monster from your opponent to make a fusion or whatever, you get the game again. It gets rolling again, and having 2 extra Monster Reborns are a very good ideas. We have 2 Cyber Repair Plant because 3 might brick. 2 is a decent enough way to play the deck. Usually when you steal your opponent's monster to make a fusion, you get a Cyber in your graveyard, you use this to search, and it says add 1 light machine monster, so 1 light. It doesn't have to be a Cyber. You can search for Galaxy Soldier, which is very, very wise if you already had an Erz in your hand, and you summoned Core to, get this to your hand. Well, you can easily just use this to get your Galaxy Soldier, and basically you can make Infinity right away. Because, you used Core to steal your opponent's monster and whatever. So this is actually a very good card, and it also allows you to recycle when the game becomes a grind game. It's a very good card for that. We have 3 machine dupes. Started off at 2, ended up at 3 because, at first I was afraid it would have been bricky. And basically just like the Ogre, only once did I draw more than 1 at the beginning of a game. So it doesn't happen too often. It's a very big risk, but it's not a risk that you are not willing to take usually when you play the deck. Because if you have a Core on the field and you play this, you get 2 Cyber Dragons from your deck, so you automatically get an Infinity out of it. So it's not a bad idea at all. And if you start the game with Core, this, and let's say Vier, or already a Cyber Dragon, you can easily just summon Cyber Dragon or Core first, and then you take your opponent's monster after having either Cyber Dragon or Vier join your Core on the field. So basically, you have two monsters, you steal your opponent's monster to make a fusion, you use that fusion and the Cyber Dragon left on your field to make the Link monster, and then basically you have some extra Cyber Dragons to, you know, make infinity. So with 3 cards, you end up with one opponent's monster gone, and 2 big bosses on your field, which is very, very powerful in this deck, because one of those bosses can just steal an opponent's monster entirely. So you get -2 to your opponent, and you get 2 big bosses on your field. Very good card in here. We also have Overload Fusion, only once. You don't really want to make too many fusions, and this could be bricky. Actually lost a game because this was one of the first cards I drew, and I had this, Machine Dupe, and 3 hand traps. That was not a very fun first game, but the deck came back eventually. We have Limiter Removal because it's awesome. You guys already know that this can win a game. This makes a game when you play it, usually. We have Called by the Grave twice because you like going second and you need to protect yourself against hand traps, but you also might end up playing first, and this is also a very good card to set against the meta nowadays, especially against the Gokis and Burning Abyss. We have Monster Reborn for the staple. We have Cosmic Cyclone and Twin Twister. You could play 2 Twin Twisters instead of Cosmic. I just played Cosmic because of True Dracos, which was one of the matchups I really had a hard time playing against, which is why I added a Twin Twister instead of just leaving it in the extra deck like I used to do. In the side deck, pardon me. But yeah, basically, 2 back row removal spells are very wise investments in this deck, especially Twin, because you can just discard Urz and search for a Cyber Dragon. Just be wary of Wake of the Dragon or something like that. The trap that when it gets removed from the field, they get to summon a monster. Just be wary of that. Be wise using these. Don't just go blindly into phase downs. Go into some spells that or traps that are face up, or, you know, field spells and stuff like that. Very wise. We have 1 Mind Control, but, you know, there's also a second one in the side deck. This is good to steal your opponent's monsters and go into some random Link stuff. It's also very good to bait your opponent's negations. Like if they play themselves, they play an Infinity or anything, you'll want to negate it before doing any searches or whatever. So they might just stop this instead of stopping other stuff. You have traps, and you have actually a few traps. But 2 Cybernetic Overflows, 3 could be overkill because you might brick, but 1 is not enough. 2 is the wise way of playing this. You can search this with Core. You can banish useless stuff from your graveyard, or hand, or field, and destroy stuff on your opponent's field. So it's also a good back row removal. And basically, if this gets used as a bait, you get to, you know, search some stuff. So, you know, it's a very wise card to use in here. We have 2 Infinite Impermanence. You could play 3, but I only play 2 because I only really want to play 2. And I'm not going to go buy a third one at the price it is at right now. But it's a very good card in here because you like going second, so it's basically a bonus hand trap. But if you go first because of your opponent's decisions, you can always set it. And, you know, this also gets to do some bonus negation when it's set and activated after being set. We have 1 Evenly Matched. Could play 2, could play 3, but 1 is enough in the main deck. You could side them if you feel like you're going to face an opponent that has bonus effects when they hit the grave, but 1 in the main deck is enough. Usually you will want to go into your battle phase. This is just really in case of card, really. And the final card is Solemn Warning, because you might end up going first or second, but this is always a good card to have. It's like a 2000 anti-True Draco, or a 2000 anti-Dante, or, you know, this really is a very powerful card against the decks that these Cyber Dragons have a hard time against, you know. When your opponent really tries to outgrind you, when you stop them at the right time, it saves you a lot of trouble, because you go through your resources very fast with this deck. You don't have that many extra deck options that recycle themselves, so you really will be focusing on outgrinding them quickly, or having them waste their resources because you just steal them back. So let's go into the extra deck very quickly. Basically, we have 2 Mega Fleets. You could play 3, but this is awesome because you steal your opponent's monster in the extra monster zone, and if they U-link you, well, bam, you just steal both of them. It gains attack, but, you know, if it gets flipped face down by any kind of effect, it loses all its stats, so it's really a way of stealing your opponent's cards, and then you need to use it for something else because you don't want it to be useless afterwards. And a lot of cards nowadays do flip face down, which is kind of weird. I didn't really realize it before playing, but when you do play, you don't expect a Book of Moon effect on any card at all, but a lot of them do have those nowadays for some reason. We play Chimera Tech Fortress Dragon because a lot of people do play machine monsters or monsters from the extra deck that are machine at some point. So this can be very relevant actually when you play against Ancient Gears, against your mirror match. When you play against, trains are going to get a lot more interest in the future, but for now, this is mainly against those two decks. There are a couple other decks that use some machine, like the orbital thing, Hydralander, or whatever the name is. I used it against that. It was a good way to get over 3,000 beat stick when I only had one card in my hand. But yeah, we only play one Chimera Tech Rampage. Used to play two because I used Cyberload Fusion, but decided to take that fusion spell out because it was bricky enough. And one of these is plenty enough. It destroys back row, it gets bonus attacks, sends stuff to your graveyard, and if you already have a lot of Cyber Dragons in your grave, use them, might as well. We have the obvious 2 Novas and 2 Infinity. Nova's effect of special summoning fusions isn't really useful because you only play one of these, but usually your opponent will focus on Infinity more than Nova. So yeah, these are obvious boss monsters that you want to see on your field. Don't need to go into details too much, but 27 becomes 29 pretty easily, steals stuff. This is great. This is just awesome. We have one Zeger. Would have loved playing 2. This used to be the other Rampage, but would need a second one. Play tested it online with 2, and it was way better than only 1. I just couldn't get my hands on 1 before the next event and stuff like that. So yeah, this is basically a weaker limiter removal, but without having your monsters die at the end of the turn, And at the same time, this is a Cyber Dragon. That's it. The name becomes Cyber Dragon, so you can use this to steal your opponent's monsters in any kind of weird scenario where this survives and your opponent still has a big boss monster and stuff like that. So yeah, it's basically attack modulating, Cyber Dragon name, and it's great overall because it gives you arrows but not your opponents. We have one Clifford Genius, could easily be replaced by any other Link 2, but I do feel like having 2 machines and 2 arrows to your zone is good, and this is safe against a lot of destruction effects, which is also very nice. We have Nightmare Phoenix and Cerberus because, you guys are playing Mind Control, might as well use that to your advantage. This is not too useful afterwards, but if you do summon something else, you can always go into Unicorn and, get some kind of advantage. And when you discard Urs or whatever that you call it, to use these guys as effects, you do get to search for Cyber Dragons. So, you're getting ready for your next turn. Your opponent lost a card or 2, and really, it helps, you can easily go into your Link 3, because usually you'll have special summoned Cyber Dragon, stolen their monster, went into this, normal summoned core, and went to Unicorn. You get a lot of pluses out of this, and it's really just a good way to get rid of back row monsters and cards overall. And the final card is Borlo Dragon, because this also really is a very powerful boss monster. If you do get the chance to summon this, it could mean game. You could have Scapegoats in your your side deck, to help you summon it. You could easily take out Genius or one of these 2 to get Proxy Dragon going and stuff like that. So, the deck does run pretty smoothly. It can very much so make your opponent mad when you steal their cards and stuff like that. I did play one guy who played somewhat a lot of monsters that were machine, and they only had, or when you play against Crusadias, they only get 1 boss monster a turn. So you just steal it, and they panic until their next turn. So you have the OTK potential right there, and Crusadias are a very popular rogue deck at the moment. So good cards to have in your side deck, would be some different cards to get you this. You could get some more hand traps like Drawl, as I mentioned earlier. You could get more Twin Twisters. You could get more Mind Controls. You could get what you call it again? Inspector Border. This is a very good card to have in your extra deck as it can stop a lot of decks quickly, especially Burning Abyss, which are very grindy. You could play Ghost Reaper and some targets for it. Instant Fusion to get yourself these guys out to, make links afterwards or make your Infinity easy. This is just some random suggestions. These are targets for your cherries, but you could easily use 7 sources in this deck because also you have only machines in here, which if you're not considering the hand traps. So really, you could just make 7 sorceress, get some other stuff, go into Borload or whatever. It's a very easy, fun deck to play. A lot of combos, a lot of grinding, and a lot of making your opponent mad, and that's really just why I love this deck so much. It's obviously not perfect. Could play more Evenlies, more Infinite Impermanence, better extra deck because missing a Zeger. But, it's a very, very capable deck, and that's really what matters. It's not that cheap, but it's not that expensive either, which is why this is an accessible deck to a lot of people. You don't need to play the hand traps if you want to play a different variant and stuff like that. You could play a variant that instead of stalling your opponent, you could just play more turbo, So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. I enjoyed playing this deck a lot, and I would like you guys to enjoy it just as much. I know that this deck has been topping a lot more recently, and that's why I decided to give you guys some insight, because sometimes people only show the cards in their profiles. They don't explain as much. I really like to get into the grind game, of the grind about the cards and stuff. So if you have any questions, feel free to mention them down below in the section for comments. And if you have any suggestions and stuff like that, points that I might have missed, if you want to clarify some stuff that I might have gone over a little too quickly, do feel free to do so. Just stay polite because, this is for everyone. This is a channel for everyone who's interested in hobbies. So, yeah, keep it, PG-13, okay, guys? So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. It's been a pleasure. Until next time, guys, Panem out.